Um, let's see, a brief history of me, if that's of any interest. I came to this country in 1971 and came to Davis for the first time in 1972 and moved here permanently in 77. And, you know, Davis has always had a very warm place in my heart for a stranger in a strange land. And Central Park, I'm afraid, has cemented that. And I doubt that you'll ever get rid of me at this point. But anyway, here's a brief history of Central Park. In the 1820s, in this area, there were very few settlers. The only people who pretty much came through were fur trappers who came down from Canada. I mean, quite a way to go. But I mean, they would take the furs back and they would sell them for thousands of dollars. You know, a good trip was when you sold $2,400 or, you know, $3,000 worth of fur when you took it back. So there was very little exploration or development of the interior of California until about the 1840s. And then in the 1840s, there were two particular wagon trains that came across. One came from Missouri, and it brought familiar names to Davis. Joseph B. Childs was on that wagon train, and he was the father-in-law of Jerome C. Davis. So they came out here and applied for land grants, and from this land plat picture of the original Davisville, you can see that the Jerome C. Davis farm was, it was actually quite extensive. This railway junction here was taken out of his farm property, and it went many, you know, quite a distance. The other wagon train brought other famous local people to town, and it came through the Santa Fe region, and it brought the Vaca and the Pena families, who are old land grant families for the region. Other names that may be familiar is Wolfskill. It was one of the original land grants also. So there was very little settlement. There were just the land grants and the farms. In 1868, Davisville was founded, and this is the original land plat for the development of Davisville. 1868 was also the year that the California Pacific Railroad was developed on the land of the Jerome C. Davis farm. It was also the year that the public school system for Davis was developed. And it was the charter year for the UC land grant college system. And at that point, UC Berkeley was coming over to Davis, and they were using it as an agricultural educational space, the farmland here near the Jerome C. Davis farm. And in 1906, that was officially taken over by UC Berkeley as the university farm for UC Berkeley. So it all sort of came together to produce what we have and where we are now. In the original land plat, you can see that it's all divided up just into housing units. And the street names are quite different. This is now our first street. This is second, this is third, and this is fourth. This is Ash Street is now B Street. Cherry Street is C Street. So this was the original land plat. And the original layout, they decided that this area here, these 4 blocks here, would be donated to produce a school. And you can see that this is B, this is C, this is third, and that is where Central Park is. So that was the origins of the land that eventually became Central Park. This is the first school that was built there, and it lasted from 1870 to 1903. It was a 2-story multi-grade school taught by 2 teachers. By 1903, the population had expanded, so they had built a new school, and you can see the 2 different entrances, and this divided the grade levels up, and it was still a 1-room school with multiple teachers. Unfortunately, this burnt down in 1918, and at that point, the school district and the city built a beautiful Spanish style building on that same lot at the corner of B, 3rd and C. And it was the elementary education for the district for up until 1950. It was a sole elementary school. My husband actually attended the school when he was little. Eventually, new schools were built, like North Davis was built in 57, Pioneer was built, Valley Oak was built. And so this became less used as a school and more as a community center. And we had dance classes and community meetings and those kind of things at the school. But it was torn down in the 60s, and we ended up with an empty parking lot there. It was just barren. This is an early picture of Davis to give you some idea of what's going on as the city developed. This is the Osteen North Campus section of town. So this is Anderson, and there's just nothing the other side of it. This is College Park, and this is the Howard Way entrance into the university. This is what is now City Hall and the Civic Center pool. This was the new high school that was built. And one thing that's very interesting is that the main arterial transportation from west to east was Highway 40 at this part of the state. And Highway 40 came through Davis. I can find, there's my cursor, came through Davis. This is Russell. 5th Street did not go through. It turned right onto B Street. You turned left onto 1st Street, and then you went under the Richards underpass, and what is the frontage road for 80 now was the original US 40. So the main traffic went through Davis, which also helped in its development. The main west-east traffic went through Davis. This is temporary housing put up for servicemen coming home from war. The population of Davis tripled in about 5 to 10 years post-World War II. Here is the school on the school site, and here is Central Park as it was configured in the 40s. Part of the New Deal were the WPA projects, and the main Davis project for the WPA was the Central Park development and refurbishment. And this is when those sycamores went in. There were 32 sycamores planted, and the bathroom building that is now being preserved was put in. So that made permanent the Central Park. Now we're going to fast forward to 1986. At this point, the school has been bulldozed, and the area between 3rd Street and 4th Street is nothing but dirt and asphalt. And depending on the time of year, it's either dust or puddles. And there were multiple ideas raised between 1966 and 1986 about what to do with it. And eventually the city decided that they would put a commercial development on it because it happened to be an economic hard time where, I mean, Davis has always had problems with tax base because of it's an education. It wasn't only an education-based community with the university and the state being the predominant employees with very little commercial development. So it was felt that if that was commercially developed, it would add to the tax base for the city. A group of people decided that that might not be the best thing, and that perhaps it should be an opportune time to extend the WPA work of the Central Park that was there. And so they put a Measure S on the referendum, and Measure S was to extend Central Park from its 4th Street termination and close 4th Street, move it all the way and extend the park all the way down to 3rd Street and put in a community building, which was the original 3rd and B building, which is now the Bicycle Museum. The campaign, this is the original drawing for the commercial development. This is the corner of 3rd and B, and this is where you would have walked into it. So it looks quite different there. The campaign got pretty heated. As you can see, I'm not quite sure the the connection here between Poltergeist 2 and Vote No on S, but it was very hard fought, and parents had no trouble in using their children to get sympathy for the project. And then it actually passed. And in the early 90s, in 1991, a public garden was put on this side of the lot. You can see here that the 3rd and B building has been put in, and you can see the remnants of the public garden. This is the remnants of a rose garden that was put in. These are flowering plums. These are the palm trees. And this end here is where, it's just deteriorated to dirt and a few weeds at this point. So in 2006, Emily Griswold was at the Arboretum, and she's employed by the Arboretum as a director there. And she approached the city about refurbishing the garden. She reached out to a variety of community groups, the Davis Gardeners Club, Master Gardeners of Yolo County, and the city. And between those groups and several other groups like Farm to Fork, it was put to the city a memorandum of understanding that we would develop it with a volunteer group, and we would maintain it, because one of the problems was this garden was beautiful when it went in, but the city was not equipped to maintain it. And so what we wanted to do was put something in and then keep it for a long time and just keep it going. So we approached the city and developed an MOU, and also developed an agreement with the Master Gardeners of Yolo County. Once we did this and we got going, we had to decide exactly what we were trying to do and how we were going to do it and why we were going to do it. So we developed a mission to provide a beautiful space for people to enjoy. And also we felt very strongly that education needed to be the focal point. It wasn't any good just putting it in for people to enjoy. We wanted to spread the word, and we wanted to educate people as to the possibilities for horticultural gardening in Yolo County. And that is where we took it to. And our focus was always on volunteer and working with other community groups to make this happen. This is our original design for the garden. You can see we've maintained a lot of the original concept. Here's the rose and flower garden. Here are the 4 flowering plum trees. These 2 are still in existence. These 2 are not. The palm trees are still there. This is the upper end, which was just very much deteriorated. And this is the vegetable bed and the beneficial beds. And then just north of there is the waterwise. And you can see how we laid it out. This is not exact to what it is now, but this was a preliminary mapping of what we did. Most important to us was to make it a sustainable garden. One thing is that everything we do at Central Park Garden can be translated into the home garden. It doesn't need any special equipment. It doesn't need any knowledge beyond what you can learn from the garden or what you can derive from our different educational programs. It just simply, we didn't want it to be an overwhelming thing that people said, oh, that's beautiful, but I could never do that. We wanted it to be the other way. We wanted people to look at it and say, boy, this is really nice, but it looks like I can do some of this in my garden. So we tried to always concentrate on that and do simple solutions for things, approach things in a very discreet way, developing a small amount of the garden at a time, so that there was no massive machinery needed or huge crowds of workforce. So that was where we went with our sustainable practices. We avoid gas-powered tools. I don't think we've ever used one down there. My mistake. We did use one. We tried to rototill the vegetable beds with a rototiller, but there was so much debris from the parking lot buried, it bent the tines on the rototiller, so we've never used one since. Green waste, we compost as much as possible on site. We do have a compost bin. The City of Davis, as part of the MOU, will collect any of our green waste and put it into the City of Davis's green waste program. So that is very sustainable. Anything that we use on site, we try to get from local resources. Our plants are all from local nurseries or UCD, Arboretum. We try to be as self-sustaining as possible by collecting seeds and propagation of the plants that we have in the garden. Mulch for weed control and water retention is provided by the City of Davis. And the other thing that we try and do is to educate people to grow a year-round vegetable garden, which is quite simple here because of our climate. And as long as you time things right, you can eat off a small amount of dirt for a year-round garden. Conservation was very important to us. All our path edging material is recycled plastic. And all of our mulches are organic materials. As I said, they're provided by the city. The Bermuda lawn that was in the meadow was quite a challenge. We have had several attempts to get rid of it, and we appear to have achieved that at this point, but Bermuda seeds will blow in on any wind, so we're always alert for it. We did at one point have an area of the meadow where we thought we had got rid of the Bermuda lawn, but it was coming back in again, and it got into some of the native grass root systems. So we simply took those out, worked on removing the Bermuda for a period of time again until it looked like it wasn't coming back up again, and then we replanted the area. So we've actually managed to achieve something there that took us a while. And that area is now California native grasses and bulbs and seasonal annual native annuals. Irrigation is very important. We try to do as little as possible. Our irrigation is on a timer with the city. Most of the areas that we have in there water bi-weekly, it's 2 weeks between watering. When we're putting in new plantings, we will hand water until they develop a good root system. And then at that point, we will move them, we'll stop doing the hand watering and we'll move them onto just the irrigation system. The pathways are all permeable. They're all DG pathways. It's very important to us to reduce the use of pesticides and herbicides in the garden. So we work with the Integrated Pest Management Program protocols that are available through the UCD Integrated Pest Management website, which is a wonderful resource. If you have any problems, it's very easy to go on there and identify what you have and what the least toxic solution is. And that means least toxic to the environment, humans, animals, insects, birds, but most toxic to the thing that you're trying to deal with. So that has been very, very effective in the garden. And over time, the city has tended to, now all of their parks are green parks. They're all on integrated pest management. And when we first started, it took some time for them to understand what we were doing and how we were doing it, and to trust us, because this was a purely volunteer organization that they had no experience with. And so we were very straightforward with the city about everything that we did and let them know why we were doing it and what we were doing. And we are very grateful for the trust that we now have with the City of Davis for what we are doing down there at Central Park Garden. The big thing that we're trying to do is encourage it as a wildlife habitat area as well. for insect pollinators, birds, hummingbirds, migratory birds, California native insects, and it seems to be succeeding. This is what rose and flower looked like when we took it on. You can see that there are quite a few rose bushes still in here. Many of them were not recoverable. Some of them were, so we kept what we could. And when we cleaned it out, this is early stages. You can see the original boxwood hedge here is still in here. We've refurbished quite a lot of the roses. We've reestablished the center beds here with a focal point of an urn. We planted, as you can see here, this is a viburnum hedge. Whoops, sorry. That's a viburnum hedge in its early stages. And the idea was to create, particularly in this area, a garden room, so that it was a place to come and sit and enjoy. Here it is more developed. This is the 3rd and B building. This is an urn that was, the original urn was unfortunate. We have a public garden, and sometimes the public does not respect what we're doing, and that's okay. We'll fix it and carry on. And the original urn that was in there was broken one weekend, and this urn was its replacement. And I'll talk about that more later on. But as you can see, the garden is slowly developing. The hedge has developed now, and you do get a sense of being in a garden room in this area. We have lots of my favorite plants in here. We have a ribes. This is the viburnum that we use because it's one of the more compact ones, although we still have to trim it and we still have to keep an eye on its spread. It's easy to maintain with just, minimum care. A butylon is one of my favorites too. And of course we have standard roses. And here was our last architectural piece that we added to the garden, was a series of arches to make the entryways into the garden space. And this was done by a local artist. We always try and use local artists for anything that we're doing down there. This is a sensory garden area as we found it. Actually, this is slightly improved. But we also, again, here tried to maintain some of the original design from the 1991 design of these beds around the focal point sculpture here of the dancing ladies. We didn't want to lose that. So thanks to the Cortopassi family, we were lucky enough to be able to match fairly well the granite stone of the original sculpture with the stone that we used to make the raised beds. And what we find now is that, Saturdays or Wednesdays when the farmers market is on, or at any time of the week, you'll see people here sitting and just enjoying the area. And we call it sensory because it's smelling, it's touching, it's feeling. We have fuzzy plants and we have smelly plants like garlic chives. And we also have edible plants in the area. This is an artichoke. We've also grown rhubarb and asparagus in that area. And one of the things that we've done with the garden is try to take advantage of the microclimates that were there inherently or that we have created with our plantings. So things like artichoke and rhubarb and asparagus can be tucked in partial shade areas and do very well. So that's the sensory area. And then this is the California native area. And there are one or two plants in there that are not California native, but not many. And this is sort of, we just sort of let whatever was there keep growing for a while. And then this is the new plantings coming up quite nicely on the west side of the garden. Here you can see one of our flowering plums in bloom. This Cliff Schmidt ceanothus is absolutely beautiful now and well developed. We have a California redbud in there that's beautifully developed. This hummingbird sage has spread very nicely. California fuchsia has spread very, very nicely. So it's filling in quite well. And we have recently put drip irrigation into this area, and it seems to appreciate that, because it was one of the awkward areas for us to get good coverage with the existing irrigation system. Here's the meadow. This is it here. This was all the Bermuda that we got out. We took this whole area out of Bermuda. Here are the palm trees, sort of 4 sentinels of the garden. And here's an early planting day before we had a permanent pathway in. We were putting in grasses and yarrow throughout that area. And here it is now, more recently. You can see the palm trees. And we have fully developed yarrow, we have California poppy, we have milkweed, we have calendula down here, we've got asters, and we've got a redbud down here. So it's really filled in and developed very well. One thing that is really nice about the meadow is that we have a variety of bulbs in there that come up during the year. We have several allium. We have the drumstick allium that comes up. Right now, the Argentine lily is coming through, and it looks sort of like a crocus and spreads very well and is looking absolutely charming as it's coming up through the blue fescue now. This is the beneficial area, and the aim here was to put plants around the vegetable bed that would provide attractants for beneficial insects. And it definitely is succeeding. This is one area. We inherited a couple of rows of Sharon here, but nothing much else. And what we have now, this isn't a shrimp plant. It's a Mediterranean plant, but it's an annual that comes up. We have heuchera in here. We have salvia along here, Santa Barbara daisy over here. We have California native iris in here. So it's all filled out, and the grasses. And so it's all filled out quite well with seasonal color and plants that will attract beneficial insects. We have California goldenrod and the western redbud. We have aster and coreopsis, and we also have manzanita. And another one that we put in this area is echium. It's a blue echium called Pride of La Palma, and that really attracts the butterflies. So this has been very beneficial, literally, in many ways in this region. Here we have the vegetable bed, and this is early beginnings trying to decide what to do with this Russian Easter egg bed. And here we're starting to develop it. We've used raised bed techniques without actually putting a raised bed in. We double dug the beds. We double dug these beds, and then we dug out the pathways where we wanted them. And that dirt was put on top of the beds, and then more compost and humus was added on top of the beds, so that the depth of the tilth in the beds became quite satisfactory. We put in drip irrigation access to each of the beds, and we have that runs off timers, so we can set each bed to a different cycle. And what we have now is more like this. This is the hand sculpture that's down in the beneficial bed. And at the moment, we don't have a lot of vegetables in, because the city thought at first with COVID that it would not be a good idea to have something that was an attractant for people to come and pick. So we didn't grow many vegetables at the beginning, but we're starting to put more in now. And we have seedlings that I have seedlings at home here that will eventually go in for the winter vegetables. We do green manure and cover crop processes. We make sure that wherever we've had a heavy feeder planted, such as tomatoes or corn, we follow that with a nitrogen fixing plant, such as an edible pea. That way we keep the garden replenished. I don't think I fertilized this bed for several years now, multiple years. and it still keeps producing good crops of whatever I happen to put in. The beneficial beds around it over time have shown, have really improved how this garden can be managed, because when we first started doing the garden, a native bee was a rarity to see. Birds were rare. But now we have the sunflower, we grow a row of sunflowers along B Street, and that really attracts the birds in. And we have bush tits and lesser goldfinch, and all the warblers come through and collect in the sycamore trees right next door. And so what we're finding is that over time, I barely have any problem with the cabbage butterfly caterpillars anymore. I have very little problems with aphids. The birds have been doing the job for me. The only thing is that, you know, at times I have to sacrifice a little, because the finches do like to eat the beet leaves or the spinach leaves. And so they'll come in and they'll rip them to shreds. But, you know, that's mutually beneficial in the long run for me. So I'm happy to tithe some to the birds. Recently, we had a sunflower bee, a ground nesting bee, that had taken up home under our tomato plants. And it was fascinating to watch it sort of drunkenly go into its hole covered with pollen. And it's just marvelous to watch all the interactivity in a garden once you develop it as a sustainable garden with good practices. This is the waterwise area, and this is, again, something, you know, it had some plantings in it that we inherited. It had a flagpole and a magnolia, and this has been worked up over the years. There are very sunny patches, such as on the far northern end. So we have rosemary and salvias and Santa Barbara daisies here, and yucca. And as you go further around this side, it becomes more shady. So we have the hellebore in there. There are many plants that you can actually grow in this shade that are waterwise. You don't have to worry about the shade always having to water. Plants that grow in the shade do not necessarily need a lot of moisture. So here you can see we put in a dry stream bed. This is ideal for handling drainage in the area. There's a beautiful carex here that gracefully covers the edge of the pathway, which we love. So there are many ways to garden in a water-wise way without worrying too much about shade or sun. There are plants that will grow in all areas. We do have an annual open house and plant sale. Many of the plants are propagated from our garden or from seed. We usually collect seed and give away packets of seed. We always have a ton of nigella seed and sunflower seed from the garden. And the other wonderful thing about the open house is that, as I said, we team up with a Master Gardener program, and we have Master Gardeners who come and staff information tables for all of the regions of the garden. So if you have a question about one of the plants in the garden or one of the plants that you're considering purchasing, we have knowledgeable Master Gardeners there to let you know just how to grow it, where to put it in the garden, and lots of information. And this is our basic financial support for the whole year. We definitely run it on a shoestring. We celebrated 10 years in 2016, and so we decided we'd keep going and see if we could make it to 20. One thing we tried to do, as I've said before, is the artworks, and this is the dancing lady and the arches. And then this is the hands down in the beneficial area. This is called Mediation, and it was dedicated to a nonprofit lawyer in town called Tom Frankel, and that's something we inherited. This is Mark Rivera's beautiful Flutter and Hum sculpture that is the centerpiece of the rose and flower garden. And what he's done is he's put on the urn the flowers and the butterflies and hummingbirds that are attracted to that area of the garden. This is Bellipede. This was commissioned from the artist Fiducci, and it's perfectly designed for children. It is of a height where we don't need to put any padding underneath it if they fall. It's a very specific height. Every piece of mosaic in here, the edges have been sanded so that there are no rough edges. Every piece of it is curved, so there are no sharp edges for children to hurt themselves on. And it is just open for any child to get on and use their imagination and do whatever they want. And that is Bellipede. We've also tried to include artwork into the humdrum. These are our notice boards. This is the one down in the vegetable area, and it has a vegetable theme. It's got pumpkin and corn and sunflowers on it, and beneficial insects up in here. And then on the practical side, we put up our announcements for the Master Gardener workshops, a map of the garden, and any other events or information that we have. This is a sundial that's in the meadow. I mean, you can see how the meadow looks so beautiful now compared to a Bermuda grass lawn. This is blue-eye grass here and yarrow, and it's just gorgeous. This is spring. I just love the meadow in spring. And so here it was in its original configuration, but over time, it's taken on a different patina, but it's a very good conversation piece with children, especially when it's daylight savings time, because they will tell me it's wrong. And so I explain to them about the sun and daylight savings time, and it's a lot of fun. As I said, education is the focal point of the garden. We label all our plants. We put in large descriptive signs to guide on best gardening practices. Here's one in the vegetable area about attracting beneficial insects. When we do things seasonally in the garden, such as cut back the grasses, it can look rather drastic to someone who's not aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we will put a single sign in front of the grasses that says, this is so-and-so grass, we're cutting it back. This is, the maintenance treatment for this plant for this time of year. So we're constantly trying to educate no matter what we're doing in the garden. Signs are placed to highlight seasonal blooms. We have a particularly splendid Daphne under the apple tree, and it's right beside the main pathway. So everybody can smell it. And so we have a sign that we put up there every year, what's that gorgeous scent? So we always try and educate with things that will catch people's eye. The annual open house is part of our education program, as I said. Thanks to Yolo County Master Gardeners, that really is a very in-depth and broad presentation of the garden. They'll give growing advice. And we also have demonstrations for drip irrigation installation and how to compost chicken manure also, because a lot of people have chickens in Davis. So that's a good piece of education. Monthly education events are usually taught by Master Gardeners. They're on a hiatus for now until COVID is resolved. But our normal pattern was to have 2 education meetings per month on a Saturday morning. And we would try and do one of them to cover the basic needs of the garden at that time of year, such as dormant pruning or rose pruning or planting winter vegetables, when to put in California native seed annuals, those kind of things. And then we would also try and do something that was specialized in some way, either a specific class on growing iris or growing succulents and cacti or orchids and or indoor plants, something like that. We've had a demonstration of how to make your own tufa containers for creating pots. So we try and vary it. to meet the, interests of the community. We do seasonal garden tours of the garden. That's also a program that's on hiatus. We were doing sort of a spring, summer, winter, fall, winter tour. We're still on Facebook and Instagram, and we constantly post about what's blooming in the garden and what the activities are in the garden. One thing that we've been focused on while on hiatus is developing a full plant list of all the garden areas with full descriptions of botanic, common name, seasonal growth, seasonal bloom, water needs of all the plants in the garden. And this will eventually be on our website. So someone will be able to go to the garden, see a plant, go to our website, and have a complete picture of where to put the plant so that it becomes, there'll be indications as to where to put the right plant for the right place. So that is slowly being developed, and we're getting close to finishing that. Educating the community through the workshops is one way we teach, but then another thing that we do is a garden steward program where interested community members, we don't ask for any experience, we don't ask for any knowledge, just interest and enthusiasm. They can sign on to the garden steward program, where we give a series of, it's usually 4 Saturday mornings in the garden. Part of it is lecture, part of it is hands-on, and they get to know the garden. And then part of their commitment to the garden as garden stewards is to come and work on some of the work days that we have down there, which are every second Saturday normally. And then we will meet with the garden stewards or the master gardener leaders if we have master gardeners who've signed up. And we'll go over the projects for the day and what we'll be doing. And then the garden stewards and the master gardeners will go out into the garden, and they'll show and teach the community members as they work in the garden how to take care of things. Which, I mean, we've had a lot of success with that. A lot of the people who have come to more permanent roles in the garden have been volunteers that have come just for one work day, and then they've kept coming back. So it's been very successful program. Here's one of our garden steward training groups. Here are some of our master gardener classes. This was on winter vegetables. This was on dormant pruning and the care of dormant fruit trees. We wouldn't be anywhere without our volunteers, from master gardeners to community members. This is actually somebody that my husband went to high school with. And as I said, we don't ask for any knowledge. We don't ask for any background whatsoever. We can teach you what you need to do. We adapt the task to the ability of the person who shows up. If we're doing propagation, we'll have a table with chairs for people to sit around and do propagation, or even tuck a wheelchair underneath if that's needed. So everybody is welcome. It is totally open to anybody who wants to join in and take part. This was planting the meadow. This was a Saturday work day, and this was a Saturday work day with Jan. A lot of the people who come to the garden are students. Many of them stick around. This is one of our now current board members who came originally as a volunteer. Here's another person who volunteered and who is now also a board member. So we're very grateful when people continue their commitment and move further into the system. But, just casually coming and helping us is just as welcome. For bigger projects, we'll ask for more people to help. This was a pathway refurbishing effort. Here we were doing both spreading mulch and a pathway refurbishing effort. We got a little ambitious that day. So we wouldn't be nowhere without community volunteers. We've also had community support in other ways. This was Sunrise Rotary putting in a fence along the meadow because we were finding people were walking their bikes through while it was growing up, or parking them there because they could walk between the plants, and we were getting a lot of damage. And Sunrise Rotary came and put us a wonderful fence along there for protection. Here we had an Eagle Scout project here. This edging was all put in as part of an Eagle Scout project. So we're open to any community involvement whatsoever. This was another Rotary project when we were putting in the center DG pathway for the meadow. Our next major project is putting in drip irrigation for the whole garden. We've done it in the California native area, and we're beginning to get areas of the rose and flower with installed drip irrigation. Up until this time, we were very careful with water. We did, water audits each year to see how we were doing. Were we wasting? Were the areas getting enough water to preserve the plantings? So we've always been very cautious and careful with water use at the garden. This was a water audit that we did, but now we're aiming to get drip irrigation into the whole garden. It will take us months, but that's okay. We'll do it a small piece at a time until we get there. So I think that might be it. So thank you. Any questions? Come visit and spend a while with us at Central Park Garden. We will enjoy your company.
You did have one question.
Yes.
Many plants crowded the beneficial area under the tree. Any harm?
No, they appear to be mutually supportive. And what happens is that when things get very crowded, such as there is one area in the beneficial where I have both California goldenrod and a wonderful aster called purple haze, and they have spread and grown. And so what we do there is we do what we call shovel pruning, and we just thin things out. The heuchera probably in that area are ready for coming out and dividing and breaking up. I mean, that's what we do. As things develop, we divide and break them up. We had a salvia near the vegetable garden notice board, and we really liked it. It was called Windwalker, but it had very open growth and very floppy growth, but a beautiful color, and it was perfect for attracting bees. So we didn't want to get rid of it. So when it became too big for the site, I lifted it, and it turned out when I lifted it, I could divide it into two. And so I've moved it to another place where it has more room to grow, and it's absolutely thriving. And I now have two of them instead of one of them. So as things become more dense, which happens in any garden, you simply go in and use a shovel and lift things. If you can divide them and spread them out, do it. If you have extras, you can always give them to your neighbors. So as plants mature and develop, that's a process that keeps the garden well maintained so that it doesn't choke on itself, basically.
Next question. Where do your vegetable harvest go?
Good question. Up until COVID, all of the vegetables were donated to community meals. We didn't consume them ourselves. I would make a delivery over there twice a week to the Community Meals Project, and I would just drop them off, and then they would use them however they wished. So we've always just donated the vegetables. It's a small area, so it's not a massive amount, but it certainly is appreciated by the community meals people when I walk in with very fresh vegetables or 10 butternut squash. They really appreciate it.
I just lost it. Deb Sorrell has a question about a mature sage. Can she speak and describe it? Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, Peg.
Yeah.
I just happened to come by your garden last week to visit, which was really wonderful. And you have a lot of sages in there. And
yeah, we do.
Yeah, and I'm working on that garden up in Vacaville. There,
yes.
It's been like since 2016 since that garden has not been attended. So there's one yucca left, and there was one sage that's taller than I am. It's a Santa Rosa Island sage.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and it the only water it was getting was whatever happened during the winter. So it's very tall and scraggly, and it looked very dried out, like it maybe was dead, but we would put some water on it and it just came roaring back. Now my question is, all of the new growth is on the top, and it's let's see, I'm around 5'4", so it must be around 5, 6, or 7. And I want to know how much I can cut it back each year to get it back to sort of a normal size. I'm afraid to cut it all at once.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
What I would do is, identify where the nodes are on the stems,
Yeah.
and cut it back at about 1/3, and then
Okay.
see where the new growth comes in.
Great.
And then just step it back from there until you get it where you want it, and allow it to regenerate in between cuttings.
Great, thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking. I just wasn't sure how much, but I
Yeah.
thought I was going to have to cut it back in stages. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would take it back by about 1/3, but I wouldn't do any more than that until you
Yeah.
see where it's going to regenerate.
Yeah. The other thing we're going to do is take some the new growth, the stems that are really, they're not woody. We're going to propagate off of those because it's an historical garden. And
Excellent.
that was planted by the last caretaker. So we want, when that one goes, we want to be able to plant back the same one that he had there with new cuttings.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm about to thin out the California goldenrod and the purple haze aster in my area of the garden. Would you have a use for any of that?
Yes, aster especially. And he didn't have goldenrod in the garden, but we're going to be probably next year being able to expand that garden. It's around 900 square feet.
Okay.
And so any extra plants you have, I'll take.
Okay.
Yeah, great, thank you.
And I'll have a look and see if any of that hummingbird sage is, I mean, it spreads so beautifully in the California native area, and
Yeah.
Usually we have to sort of shovel prune that as well. So I'll have
Yeah.
a look and see if any of that's available for you.
That's great, because that's one of the ones we're going to plant also.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Great, Deb.
Thank you, Peg. Appreciate it.
Last question. How much is the annual budget of the garden, water consumption, etc.?
Let's see. Our annual budget actually is, we basically allocate $100 per area that you spend. And then if you have a large area that you need to refurbish, you come to the board and you say, please, here are the plants I want to buy. So the budget varies depending on what you're doing, but we sort of have $100 each per year for refurbishment. And you know, we've had grants and we've done fundraising. So, you know, we've kept ourselves going quite nicely, but our major fundraiser is that open house. And that's how we manage. But we do have so much support from the city. We don't pay for water. The city pays for all the water. We don't pay for the mulch. The mulch is delivered to us. We don't pay for the decomposed granite for the pathways. So we have a significant amount of underneath financial help from the city through the MOU.
That's it.
Good. So Joan, can I jump in? And so next week, 2 weeks, we've been in a drought for actually about 20 years with a couple little breaks. But so next week we'll do gardening during a drought. And actually there's an article that I wrote in the Master Gardener newsletter that was just published if you want to read on the same topic. So
an excellent article that he wrote.
Well, thank you.
Great.
So hopefully we'll have a chance for a few questions and a little discussion about how to do water-wise gardening, basically.
Excellent, Mike.
Thanks, Peggy. Good job. It was really interesting. I like the history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Is what you've
Sorry,
done.
I was a little late. I was too busy making sure I had it all in my head.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Peg.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Peg. Appreciate it.